Yes, indeed, Steeler Nation. We are back for another great episode with one of the greatest Pittsburgh reporters, Ray Fittipaldo, the Sick Podcast Steeler Crazy. I am Jay York Football. Alongside of me, as always, looking studious, mic'd up Sports One. How are you doing today? It's about 9 degrees in Pittsburgh, by the way, today. So
that's what I've heard. Man, you and I are really going with the bland backgrounds these days. We need to switch that up a little bit. I don't know if it's just winter vibes or something.
I'm in a different spot in my house today. I'm trying out some stuff. So
We both got our Steeler gear going on, but I look like I'm about to teach a class, and so we have a good guest today, as you mentioned, because he'll certainly enlighten a lot of us on tons of Steeler happenings. So whenever you're ready, JY, let's get to it.
Shane, take it away.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Aaron Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Yeah, as the saying goes, this guy needs no introduction. If you're a fan of Pittsburgh Steelers or Pittsburgh sports, you certainly have followed him before. It's on the Steelers beat for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's none other than our guy, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, what's going on, man?
Good afternoon to you guys. Always a pleasure to be with you. And what are we, a week away from the Combine? So plenty of storylines to get to.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, football in Pittsburgh is 24/7, 365. You know that as well as anybody. So as soon as the season ends, people are putting out mock drafts and freaking out about who the quarterback is going to be in 2025, which I guess is a fair transition, of course, as your brain probably is about to explode at this point with all the reporting, fake reporting, who knows at this point. But I guess I want to ask this. Do you think that the Steelers starting quarterback next year was on the 2024 roster?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's funny you mentioned, like, we just got to get to the Combine next week because we actually get to talk to Omar and stuff like that, and we won't have the Trevor Lawrence rumors and all this other stuff that's pure fantasy. So, for me, guys, I think it's probably going to be Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. And contrary to like what other people are saying, I don't think the Steelers even know yet. I still think those discussions are being had. Will we know next week at the Combine? Maybe. If not then probably, the week after that. I think March 12th is the start of free agency. I don't think they want it to get to that point. They'll probably want to settle on their guy before that. So I would say next week or first week of March, we'll have the answer. And that's as long as those guys want to play ball. If it's true Russ wants to come back, he probably comes back for 2 for 40, 2 for 50 million. If Justin wants to come back, we're talking much smaller number, probably, 2 for 28, 2 for 30, something like that. So neither of these guys, I don't think, are going to break the bank. So I think that's one good thing when you look at it from the Steelers' perspective and, their cap space and, their obvious needs to address, other spots on the roster in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to the NFL Combine. Could the draft be an option? Is that you're probably starting to dig deep on some of these guys? They're at a weird spot, obviously, in 21, which is seemingly been for the last decade picking. Is there a quarterback potentially in that area that you see could be a fit? And if you're Omar Khan and the Steelers, is it something that you actually entertain in the first few rounds?
Yeah, I saw Field Yates did a mock draft recently, and he had them taking Jackson Dart at number 21. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but if you're talking about getting a dual threat quarterback that has mobility and the arm, I don't know if he fits the bill for a guy who's going to be able to use his legs in the pros. So, day 2 or, not first round, I'd be on board for Jackson Dart, but just not at number 21. To me, the sweet spot for the Steelers is, whether it's Justin or Russell Wilson, that guy's going to be a bridge quarterback, and you do have to find the future long-term starter at some point. And there's a school of thought that as long as you don't have that guy, take a flyer on a guy in the mid rounds. Like my first mock draft, I had them taking Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Big time project. He's not close to being an NFL starter, but he's got the traits. He's got that athleticism that Mike Tomlin wants. He's got the arm. It's just not polished. He's not a pro passer right now. So, I would be okay with taking a guy, maybe second, more likely third, fourth round. Just see what you have, throw a flyer out there. And then if not, go out to get your quarterback in 2026 when it's supposed to be a much better quarterback draft class.
Yeah, I hear you, Ray. I mean, for me, I think when I look at that situation, I just see so many similarities to Justin Fields anyway. And the fact that, he's still a young quarterback with a lot of those traits. I know you mentioned that, I think people are starting to wane on him potentially being a franchise quarterback, but I still see some Milroe-like upside even in a 25-year-old like Justin Fields. Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, have to agree there. Steelers saved $12 million by cutting Preston Smith. Who do you think could possibly be next?
Well, Cordero Patterson is one, I think. It's a small number. I think you save $2 or $3 million there, but I would do that. Great running backs draft class. So just go out and get your second or third string running back in the draft. And I think another no-brainer is Larry Ogunjobi. They probably paid too much in free agency a couple of years ago. I think Larry's making like 12 or 13 million a year. I understand why they did it. They were thin on the defensive line. They really didn't have anyone after Cam Hayward. So I get it, but he hasn't performed up to the contract. He's not worth $13 million a season. So I would cut him. I think they can save themselves $8 million a year if they do that. And you want to talk about replacements. Yeah, this is a great draft class for D linemen, but they should also get one in free agency. Milton Williams from the Eagles is a free agent this year. I don't know that they're going to be able to re-sign him. You want to put some big money in the D lineman, put it in Milton Williams, or you can get a guy, Javon Hargrave, former Steeler.
Yep.
Probably going to get cut. He's 32, but he could be like a stopgap guy until that younger guy in the draft comes along. So I think with both D tackle and receiver, you're going to see them address that in free agency and the draft as well.
Yeah. Just like the question mark at quarterback, we're talking about a question mark at running back. Your best guess, will Najee Harris be on the team next year?
I know Mike Tomlin really likes him. That's his guy. So I'm leaving the door open for it. But I mentioned this running backs class. So to me, you put the low round tender on Jalen Warren. I think it's a little over $3 million. And then you could go out and get your new running back in the draft. Get that guy third, fourth round. See if you can have him be like the 1B to Jalen Warren's 1A. That's the route I would go. But I understand that Najee's a valuable guy. I don't know what he would command in free agency, but I don't have a problem with Najee Harris. I just don't think he's worth like $9 or $10 million a year. Like he's productive, he's available, and he's always been a team player.
What is it, 3,000 or 4,000 yard seasons in a row? I just seen a statistic out there. So
yeah, he's always available. Jalen Warren's a smaller guy. Injuries have kind of hampered him the last couple of years. If you do sign Najee, I wouldn't have a problem with it because he's always available. He's a good player, but I just wouldn't sink a lot of money into him just because I think this draft class is so good and you can get a guy on the cheap for 4 years as opposed to paying him, $7-8 million on probably a 3-year contract. So that's the route I would go.
Yeah, I would lean towards the draft myself. He has been great for us, though, consistent. Wise. Talk about another guy, George Pickens. You think he'll be in the black and gold in 2025?
Man, that's the question of the offseason. Omar Khan's going to be talking at the Combine next week, and that's probably going to be the first question that he's asked. Listen, you guys know he's a tremendous talent.
It's great.
There are probably not 5 other receivers in the league who have the talent that he has. But to be a productive football player and to be a good pro, there's so many other things that go into it. You got to want to go out there and block for your teammates. You got to want to show up on time to work and for games. You got to know the plays. You can't, do what he did in that Chiefs game. And, I'm not absolving Russell Wilson that pick. I mean, they were never going to win that game anyway, but, that just got them behind the 8 ball. And there's just so many other things that go into it with George Pickens. You have to have great leadership around him. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe he's just a knucklehead and doesn't listen. I don't know. But for me, it's not working out. I would try to get a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him, turn that around and invest in the draft on another receiver and just, kind of move on. I mean, that's where I am with him. They could do 2 other things. They could let it play out. He's on the team in 25 and that's it. You walk away, or they could sign him to a deal. I don't think they can sign him to a long-term deal. I don't think what went down in 2024, I don't think that's a possibility now. So whether it happens in March or whether it happens closer to draft day, I do think trade is a distinct possibility.
Yeah. Before I throw it back over to Mike, talk about some free agent wide receivers who might be a possibility. I know at this time of the football season, everyone's being thrown around. Like I always kid, I said with the quarterback situation, I'm like, Neil O'Donnell's going to throw his hat into the ring here. So just kind of talk about some free agents that could possibly be in the black and gold.
Yeah.
Or trade.
Yeah. So
trade.
The big name in the fall was T. Higgins, right? Like T dropped some hints. Hey, maybe I'll go play for the Steelers. And now they're going to franchise him. So presumably he's not going to be an option for them. So he's the top free agent on the market. Now, you want to look at some trades. We could talk about Cooper Kupp. We could talk about Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo, a couple years younger. I think he kind of fits what the Steelers want to do. Like he's a gritty guy. He'll block. He's not the biggest guy, but I think he'll play with the Steelers mentality. And depending on who the quarterback is, I think Cooper Kupp would be interesting as well. Talk about just getting a vet leader in there who can maybe just sort of wrap his arms around that receiver room and do things the right way. I don't think he'd be a bad option. But he's 32 or 33, so you really got to be careful. Like if you bring Cooper Kupp in, you got to know, okay, Russell Wilson's going to be my quarterback. We're going to embrace the pass. We're going to do certain things on offense to make that a worthwhile trade scenario. So I think those decisions are going to be had after they make the decision on the quarterback, and I think we'll have a better picture of that, like I said, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. You mentioned the word fantasy when talking about Trevor Lawrence earlier, which obviously seems to be the case given his contract situation. Would you put Matt Stafford in the fantasy section as well?
Yeah, I think I read somewhere they want like a top 5 pick for him.
Whoa.
Steelers have like the 21st pick, so that wouldn't happen. And like I'm just thinking about this from the Rams perspective. Yeah, they maybe they got salary cap problems. I don't know about. They're trying to get rid of Kupp. Maybe they don't want to pay Stafford what he's worth. But I watched him in the Eagles game, man. Bad weather. That guy's still a good quarterback. So I would be all for Matthew Stafford in the right circumstances, but they would have to protect him. He's not a mobile guy, right? So you can't be 23rd in the league in sacks allowed like the Steelers were this year. Troy Fautani's coming back. That's great. He'll shore up the right side. Broderick Jones on the left side, we'll see. But if you're going to bring in like a pocket passer, you better be sure that you can protect him, and you better have weapons around him too to take advantage of his skill. So, like for me, if you want to go out and go the Matthew Stafford route, I'd be all for it. But then that maybe changes your draft strategy too, right? Maybe like a receiver or a tight end comes into play in the first round. You build around that guy. So, we'll see what happens here. But I still think it's probably Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I just don't see a big splash move coming at quarterback.
We're hanging out with Ray Fittipaldo here. Of course, Steelers coverage, round the clock, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Before we get you out of here, just a couple more things. The coaching staff, we heard sweeping changes, right? Maybe that's not a direct quote, but some form or fashion there would be change. It doesn't feel like there was any change except for minor things defensively. Your thoughts on that, and were you surprised?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I've been covering Mike a long time now. I'm at the point now where I believe what he does and not what he says. So he kind of says a lot after the season ends. And, I'm paraphrasing like you, but he basically said, how can we run it back when we crapped in the bed over the final five games of the season? Well, basically you're running it back. Yeah, you changed the secondary coach, and yeah, you changed the inside linebackers coach. But in terms of the changes people were maybe wanting or thinking were going to happen, those aren't going to happen. So they are basically running it back with the same coaching staff. So maybe that's just me. I've been covering this team for a long time now, but what Mike Tomlin says in the news conference setting isn't always what happens.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of speculation around Pat Meyer, of course, and Terrell Austin to a degree, but I think a lot of us are certainly shocked and maybe displeased would be another word for that. I mean, you could sum this up really quickly. Is there any part of you that thinks Mike Tomlin will actually be on the hot seat next season?
No, because $50 million is owed to him over the next 3 years. And, I keep, people, I haven't seen the Steelers fan base this upset in a long time. And I think now a lot of the anger is being redirected from like Mike Tomlin to Art Rooney, because Art Rooney is the one who signed him to that contract. And, I wasn't in the room when Art did his postseason thing, but the question I wanted to ask him was, why was it a 3-year deal last summer? Like you always went 1 year or 2 years with Mike. Why did you go 3 this time? Was that like something that Mike mandated if he was going to stay, or was that something you wanted for the stability? And we don't really know that answer. Maybe, we can get a chance to ask Art that at a point later this season. But to me, that's the question going forward. It had always been 1 and 2 year extensions. Now we get a 3. So even if they do have a bad year, guys, are the Steelers are they going to eat?
I don't think. No, he'll come. Yeah, that's crazy.
32, $34 million. That's not in their DNA. So he might be on the hot seat in terms of how the fans think about him. But as long as he's owed that money, he's not going to be on the hot seat for Art Rooney and Steelers front office.
There you have it. Hey, well, before we get you out of here, just tell us where everyone can find you. Always a pleasure having you on the show. We'll definitely have you back on again once the season starts. But just tell everyone what you have coming up next.
Yeah, I mean, we got coverage from the Combine next week. We'll be doing videos, podcasts, of course, stories at postgazette.com. We got our own YouTube channel out there at the Post Gazette now. So all kinds of coverage from the Combine. And I don't know. It's draft season, guys. Everyone's hopeful this time of year. It's almost like we're in Pirates spring training. Now we're in Steelers draft season. So it's all the same.
The optimism is it all.
Hope springs eternal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Guys, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Yeah, great show there. So many things to take away. I think maybe my big takeaway ultimately will be the fact that George Pickens, he said it's the biggest question of the offseason. So somebody that close around the team, I think we haven't heard a lot of rumblings in the past few weeks. Initially after the season, there were a lot of questions. Will they trade him? Will they not? It's kind of died down a little bit, but it sounds like, maybe it could ramp back up whenever Omar Khan addresses it next week. I don't expect him to say much. Obviously, he always holds his cards close to the vest. But I mean, it seems like these reporters, people really close to the Steelers, a lot closer than us, are incredibly skeptical about him coming back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I kind of what stuck out to me that the George Pickens thing, but kind of what he said about Mike Tomlin. Why they always do a 1 or 2 year. What's with the 3? It just really makes you think. And like I said, I think he exactly hit the nail on the head there, Mike. It's saying, the fans might want, Tomlin gone, but the Rooneys aren't going to budge. And I think that they're not going to eat that much cash as well. It's just, like you said, it's not in their DNA. But it's going to be interesting, man. I mean, the hot seat as far as like, he's going to get asked the tough questions. I'm not talking about Tomlin because Rooney, this is where it all starts. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. But like I said, baseball's starting, Pirates starting spring training.
Bad about the Steelers. I don't even want to bring up the Pirates because where people are pissed left and right, back and forth. So
but I mean, it's good stuff. It's just a good time of the year for sports, and just always happy to hang out with all Ians and do this. We're really fortunate, and we're just going to keep rocking and rolling. We have some great guests lined up. We'll be back later this week, as well as next week. Just Steelers are in Ireland next year, so that's going to be exciting. I know we have some lads over there, so
good teaser.
Good stuff going on. But hey, as always, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We're on YouTube as well as Spotify, Google, Amazon. Just Google it and you'll find us. The Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy, J York Football, Mic'd Up Sports 1. We'll catch you guys soon. Shane, take it away.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.